Hey everybody, welcome back to COVID-19, the opportunities you didn't think of. I'm your hostess, Casey Wallace, and here with me today is Adam Apollo. He's an extraordinary young man who has taken his gifts of his scientific mind and his spiritual knowing and brought them together in a powerful platform that is very useful and very relevant to our timely existence here on this earth ship. The conversation today is going to move you in new directions. It's going to assist you to open your mind and to get your own energy space in alignment with the possibilities rather than the fears. And we are very honored to be in this time with Adam Apollo. Thank you, Adam, so much for being here with us and with our viewers today.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
I'd love to begin this conversation. We're just going to touch bases briefly. We know you have a great background in your wisdom, in your mind, in your intelligence as to the relativities of the physical planes and how the galactic energies and the universal energies work, and that you discovered through your own knowing and experience the ties into the ethereal realm and marrying those two things together. This journey started for you when you were, well, I'm going to say probably from the time that you arrived in the physical and moved forward into this spectacular teaching and assistance that you do for the world. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was about 15 when I really woke up, but there's been threads of truth in me my whole life. I think sometimes we have to go through significant personal transformation to really open up to the deeper layers of who we are.
I have to ask you this question. Okay, how does your family handle you? I mean, is this just fully accepted? You know, Adam's just this supercharged guy that, you know, assists everybody in their expansive journey. Does your family kind of think we're not quite sure what you do and who you are? You know, how does this work for you in your three-dimensional day in and day life with everybody that you interact with?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I don't get to hang out with my parents every day anymore. Um, but that's kind of normal. I'm 38. So, but my parents are both really amazing, beautiful people and very open people. My dad was really into organic food and conscious thought and kind of granola guy when I was little, practice yoga and things like that. I didn't understand any of that at the time. But eventually, my parents had divorced when I was 2 years old. So eventually, my dad ended up remarrying, and the woman that he connected with, she had dedicated her entire life to teaching people about divine love. And this massive dedication in her, where she'd literally go to Goodwill, she'd buy up all the blankets, and she'd walk around town barefoot, in the alleyways and the streets, and literally pass out blankets to homeless people all day long. And she had a massive transformational impact on my father. She ended up passing away in a car accident, which led to a lot of my own personal deep transformation and growth. But for my dad, it made him feel that what was most important was celebration of love and our deeper understanding of how to be love and to live love in our daily lives. And so he ended up becoming a divine love minister and moved to Hawaii and started doing weddings for people in Hawaii. So he's always been extremely open to everything that I've had to share. And when I first discovered energy, I think he handed me this book called The Celestine Prophecy. And that was back in 1997 or something like that. And it was such a beautiful gift to receive because it showed me that my father understood energy and synchronicity and things that I was only just beginning to start to articulate. My mom was always open to astrology and numerology and had a bunch of amazing books in these areas on her bookshelf. Also, her family was connected to Marwan Shariar Irani, also known as Meher Baba. So I had some deep family ties with a spiritual master who had done huge healings for, hundreds of thousands of people all over the world. And so when I woke up, I began to start to see my mom and my family and her journey spiritually through a new lens as well. So I had a very cultivating, nurturing environment, although I was living in Western North Carolina at the time when I woke up, and not many other people were on the same page, that's for sure.
Well, they can't be, right? I mean, we know that, unfortunately, a little bit still, the mass majority is deeply seated in fear and resistance to how powerful we are, how creative we can be. Adam, I want to talk in this program today on what do you see going on, in energetically, with the situation that has now come to surface worldwide. And what can you tell our audience as an inspiration to, put your thoughts, put your energy towards, and what are the benefits of doing that?
Yeah, I would be happy to share that with people. Um, it's a time of great transformation, and we have over the past couple decades gone through a lot of change in this world, and the internet has opened pathways to a much deeper level of connectivity and communication. I like to think of it as Gaia's third eye is opening, and we're beginning to really see and be able to translate what each other are communicating across language barriers, across borders. And so once again, we're building the Tower of Babel, so to speak, kind of working towards unification as a species and as a culture on the planet. So why are we all stuck at home alone right now? Well, here's the thing, right? Is that when we go into the flow of completing our missions and completing our projects and doing our work in the world, we can get caught up a lot in the grind, in the normal day-to-day way things go. And when we get into these kinds of habitual patterns and we're just kind of steaming along without time to self-reflect, without space to be able to really look at our intentions, to be able to really look in the mirror at our integrity. How are we operating? How are we behaving? Life often interjects something that causes us to have to stop for a moment. Sometimes that happens in the form of an illness. Sometimes that happens in the form of a tragedy in our lives. But life slows us down when we're not quite on the right track. So in many ways, we can look at this as a massive collective, stop sign that's saying, look, as a planet, you guys are just streaming along. You're not stopping and looking at what you're really doing to the environments that you're in, the impacts that you're making on a daily basis. And if you don't pay attention to how you're impacting this earth and this planet, well, then Mama Gaia's got to kind of, give you a little kick in the butt and teach you a lesson and say, hey, pay attention to what's happening here. Now, I want to really lay that out as a foundation because it's something that everybody can relate to. We can all relate to that moment where we've been doing things the same way, and then life stops us and says, hey, it's time to look a little deeper. It's time to really reflect on your path, on your work, on your life, on what you're doing, and really make sure you're going in the right direction and you're doing it with the right level of integrity. Now, that kind of reminder and teaching that kind of refocuses us back inside and on who we are and on what we're doing, that's really, really different from the kinds of information that we see a lot out there right now, which are all focused externally on claiming and blaming and pointing the finger at somebody else and saying it's all their fault or it's this person. We have a lot of different interesting transmissions going on out there, let's just say. And some of them have the very kind of rancid stink of disinformation campaigns that I've seen come and go, mostly focused on our relationship with extraterrestrials and galactic cultures. There's just been a pouring out over time of different disinformation currents that try to confuse us and give us just enough truth that we bite the hook, and then they lead us off a cliff. And this is exactly what happened with like the flat Earth conspiracy, whatever the heck you want to call it. It was extremely simple equation, right? I mean, you look out at the stars, everything out there, if you use a telescope, is a sphere. You know, the moon is a sphere. Like, we are orbiting a sun that's a sphere. Like, we look down at the small scale and everything's spherical. Like, and yet somehow a little thread that points to the conspiracies in NASA. And yes, sure, there absolutely have been lots of disclosure about photographs being manipulated by NASA and about lies propagated by military industrial complex. So there's the truth, right? So you have these little pieces of bread that are the truth, and then they sandwich around an idea that is completely lacking in all kinds of scientific validity and in any observational validity. And somehow people still eat the sandwich. Then they end up really getting intense about it and feeling really in conflict with everybody else. And the next thing you know, their entire credibility is gone from their lives because they followed this hook down the path. And now this person who's been revolutionary and progressive and actually seeing the conspiracies going on and trying to get to the truth is now left hanging off of a cliff and has lost their credibility and is now, mired in this Maya, this illusion of a spell of consciousness. And I see a lot of the same thing happening right now with a group called QAnon, which emerged right after President Trump got into office. And they have some very, very extreme views. And it's really fascinating because, there's this kind of tale going on that what's happening right now is, the whole secret societies and cabal are being arrested behind the scenes, and a bunch of pedophiles, which somehow include Oprah and Tom Hanks, are all like supposedly getting arrested, but they're still tweeting and saying, what's going on and what the heck are they talking about? Because we're fine and at home, and you have these big rolling spells. And I think that people latch onto it because we want to believe, we want this, whole cabal thing to end. We want the military industrial complex to end. We want the centralized power structures to come down. We want the distribution of sovereignty to come up. But you're not going to get that through this angle where supposedly, someone who's a world leader, is supposedly saving us all, with this great thing that they're doing, while at the same time they're propagating conflict and hate between people of different races, and they constantly like dishonor women with their language and their words and their behaviors and their actions. These are not illusions created by a media or a news. These are direct things you can witness with your own eyes. And so we have to approach things more scientifically and holistically, right? Not partisan or bipartisan. We have to start really looking at the issues that we see in society and in the world from a holistic perspective of how do we as a species unite together and actually address the real problems together? How do we improve life and the environment for our kids? How do we make sure that people are educated so that we actually can create a working, an amazing and evolving economy in this country and in other places in the world? How can we see through the cracks and accept each other more, seeing the trauma that each other have been through, and actually acknowledge that it is trauma that causes people to act and to behave in ways that create conflict and create more trauma? And how can we apply ourselves as healers to these conflicts in the world and develop a better sense of acceptance of each other and realistically look at the behaviors and actions of each other and the level of integrity held with each other and challenge where there's not integrity? Because if we can't challenge where there's not integrity in ourselves, we can't challenge where there's not integrity in others. And it's important that we do this work right now. It's a very essential time for us to really look at the full stack of who we are, what we're doing here, how we're working with each other, who we're judging, and how we're behaving towards this family of life that we're with on this beautiful planet.
I think one of the most difficult vantage points in our lives is the mirror in front of us. And we see ourselves last. You know, we see everybody else. We can point out everything everywhere else. But that mirror in front of us is the vantage point that we oftentimes turn away from. And this is a massive mirror. You know, it's a massive mirror. I remember, I think I said this on one of the other interviews, early on with the disbursement of massive information to get everybody into fear and to gather everybody in a controlled substance type of application and this and that, and the threads that are coming through, you know, social media. And one friend of mine, some person I went to high school with, I won't even say how long ago that was, but anyway, some person jumps on and says, anybody living in the Los Angeles, Irvine area, if you need help getting to the market, my wife and I will come and get you. We'll get you. It was the first thing I think I saw. A little thing by this guy. I can't mention his name. And I was like, and there it is. And there it is. And I, you know, started getting that, more of that energy out there. Just looking for that little tear, that little drop, you know, in that ripple. And we understand that there's real issues going on. There's behind the scenes issues going on. There's the high frequency energy going on. There's the low frequency energy on. But I think, Adam, that you may agree, or what we'd also like to talk about with the audience is we can choose, right? Like, we get to choose our realities and our experiences. How do you keep yourself? I know how you keep yourself because you're just there. But for the audience members, how do we help them get into this choosing of this extraordinary opportunity to grow ourselves at this time?
Yeah. Well, it happens naturally and emergent in times of crisis. I mean, I'm sure if you've done a walk in the neighborhood, which I've been out taking walks a lot, all these neighbors, people that I've never met, live on this mountainside, you know, that would just never look before or just drive by. They all are waving now. They're all like, hey, another human, you know, you're alive. Are you healthy? Great. You know, it's the emergence of compassion and care. And this is really the practice, is how do we hold a space of compassion and care for each other through this time, right? It's not about right and wrong. It's not about who you believe in or who you want to elect as the president or any of these things. It's actually about, what are the values that you hold? Like, what do you care about? And are these values things that actually create more unity and acceptance for all the people around you? Like, can we question if our behavior is actually matching the standard that we're trying to set for ourselves? And do we notice that when we treat people a certain way and when we act with a certain level of love and compassion, do we see a change in the relationships that we have and the level that that comes back to us and the way that people want to connect with us? You know, we can so easily, you know, just draw a circle and make a series of values and just say, well, everybody outside of that, you know, I don't care about, I don't want to know, I don't want to talk to you, right? But what you're doing then is you're actually just putting yourself in a cage. And right now it's time to really take this spaciousness, take this extra time you have at home, you know, look around your house. Like, what does the map of your life look like? And are you putting yourself in a cage? When was the last time you reached out to really understand or explore something new, some other culture, some other way of looking at the world? Are you open to even seeing the fact that other people out in the world see things differently? And can you look at the world through their eyes for a moment? See their challenges in business or economy or environment or livelihood or family or health? Pick a sector. But can you authentically allow yourself to really see and experience what it might be like to be them. And this as a practice, I think, extends into how we relate to what's going on the internet. Because I know a lot of us, we're just in constant deluge right now. It's stories, internet, news, media, people's posts, blah, 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 blah. And it's really valuable to do this practice that I've been doing for a long time, which is actually allowing myself just to see what are the archetypes. It's almost like playing a card game, right? And you pick the queen of hearts and the jack of diamonds and the king of spades or whatever, and you see these different cards, and each one is a different archetype. And so you're looking and you're like, oh yeah, okay, so that's the Joker right there, and then this person is whatever, and you just kind of like look at it and you be like, okay, yeah, that's that archetype. Okay, yeah, that's that archetype dealing with this. And each of these, you can't have the whole deck without all of them, right? So it's not that there's a good archetype and a bad archetype. It's that different archetypes are going to look at the world in different ways. And the more we can understand those different archetypes and those different people, the more acceptance we have, the more communion we have, the more compassion we have, the more love we have. And, the world is a better place. And it feels better inside too, because judgment is a powerful thing. And the moment we really judge externally and focus that judgment on someone else, a lot of times that mirrors judgment inside of ourselves. And so it's important to learn from this dynamic and from this teaching of where we're pointing the finger and how sometimes we're actually pointing that finger into a mirror.
Thank you for your demonstration to look at things and different archetypal concepts. That satisfies a lot of people, the personality and minds on how to deal with this. And also to be able to step back and view it from not reactivity, which is blinding, okay, but to calm yourself down and gaze upon it from that calm, broader view of reasoning and creativity for your own self. And I think just that levels everybody down a little bit instead of that ferratic energy of just reactivity and fear. We can just level ourselves down a little bit and take a broader look.
Yeah, there's one more thing that I really want to add to that, and it has to do with fear. And it also has to do with this virus, which is so in Chinese medicine, which is 6,000-year-old plus system. It's highly effective. You have to go through 4-year university to learn Chinese medicine in its fullest. It's a highly complex system. It's not just some simple kind of new agey, thing that you can do on the side for a couple months and figure it out. But in Chinese medicine, there's two things. One is that that grief rules the lungs. So the coronavirus, COVID-19, is a virus that tends to basically enter the respiratory passages, enter the lungs, and attack the lungs. And when we have any kind of dis-ease of the lungs, it's usually related to grief that has been blocked. And when we block grief, we block our breath. We restrict our breath. We don't breathe as much. We don't want to feel the feelings that are there. And so I really want to put this message out to really invite people that might be having some challenges either with this virus or have friends that are, or family that are, to invite them to look at what it is that they have not grieved. Where is their grief? And have they really grieved deeply recently? Because grief, according to the Dagara tribe in Africa, and I studied with Melodoma Some and Sabamfu Some, and I did grief ritual with Sabamfu Some of the Dagara tribe, and they believe that grief is actually the block of joy. And so when we don't have happiness in our community or in ourselves on a daily basis, it's really because we haven't grieved what we've lost. And others I've met in my life held the perspective that grief is a form of worship. So by grieving something that has gone or that we have lost, we are actually in a sacred communion and worship of it. It's a way to really honor it and receive the gift from it through this gratitude that's expressed through the grief and through the tears. Now, there's another piece of perspective, which is that from Chinese medicine, the kidneys are connected to fear. And there's a relationship here between these two kidneys and the two lungs. And it's that when we are blocking a lot of grief, we also tend to magnify two different emotions. One is anger, which is liver, and one is fear, which is kidneys. And so a lot of times people end up, because they've blocked this emotional experience that they've had from losing a loved one, or for seeing, for example, children being poisoned around the world, or seeing like what's happening to people that take, chloroquine, which is like a horrible drug that's used to treat malaria. And its side effects are like worse than malaria itself, and way, way worse than coronavirus. So by the way, don't take chloroquine. Just look up chloroquine's side effects if you're curious about this. And like seeing people be poisoned, seeing what's happening on the planet, seeing the environment, what we've done to the environment, and how we've gotten off track, there can be a lot of grief stored up in us, and sadness and pain and feelings that we're just not looking at. And so when that gets blocked, we go into anger and we go into fear. And so those two emotions in many ways can be kind of cover-ups. And if we're willing to dig a little deeper, like what is it behind why am I really angry? What am I really actually upset with? What's really in pain inside of me? And you ask that question, and you can get deeper, and you can get into that magic of the grief, and you can start to feel that feeling again. And it's very powerful, and it's very healing. And the same is true of fear. If you can really get under to what you're really, truly afraid of, what I find is that most people are actually just afraid of death. They're just afraid of loss. They're afraid of the end. They don't know what's going to happen. And when you can meet your fear of death, this is a deep samurai practice, by actually meditating on death and on what is the worst possible thing that could happen with death. And when you die, you start to actually break it open. And then you discover that all along it was just a lot of love that you felt, and a lot of grief that you had for a loss of loved ones, when you haven't really lost them at all. They're still with you. So that felt, yes, thank you for receiving that.
Very much. In fact, you just answered a fabulous question in relationship to my mother's own passage out of the physical, because she died of lung disease and she deeply grieved the death of my father 25 years earlier. Thank you for that gift today, Adam, very much. I also have a small percentage of my life experience in ancient Chinese practices. I was raised with a Chinese acupuncturist as my doctor, and martial arts and sports and things like that. So everything that you are speaking of is triggering all of my memories of being around Dr. Kim. But the wisdom of the practices that you are encouraging are extremely valuable and useful. Thank you for allowing your heart to just let that flow from you today, knowing to our viewers that none of these interviews are scripted in any way, shape, or form. We've just asked these incredible practitioners and global leaders to step forth and release what's coming from their heart in this conversation, and Adam certainly has done that for us. So in the intoxication of being in your company, Adam, how do we get more of you? How can these viewers learn more about all of the extraordinary work that you're doing, and just get connected with you on a little bit deeper connection?
Sure. Yeah. It's easy to find me. You can just Google Adam Apollo, but adamapollo.com is my main site, and has a lot of portals to most of the different work that I do. And that includes some of the different online academies that I've produced and courses that I've produced, lots of video media and audio media you can watch for free and learn about some of my work in unified physics and self-development, guardianship, and etc. And yeah, you can jump on my mailing list there. I very rarely send things out, but sometimes once a month or twice a month, and it's usually just important updates and some additional information whenever I've released a new music set or a new video to check out and that kind of thing. So that's the best way to find me, is just adamapollo.com.
Adam, we need more mailings from you. So now I'm going to bug you about that. Now, so that you don't say, you only get an occasional mailing now, because people are going to want a little bit more of you. Thank you so much for unexpectedly and just hopingly that you would join us today for this interview and stepping up and showcasing yourself so beautifully. Thank you so much.
No, such an honor and pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, to all of our viewers out there, again, I am Casey Wallace, and bringing this program, COVID-19, the opportunities you didn't think of, through Xpnsion Network. We want to thank you for watching and spending the time in some uplifting energy. Please use these suggestions and practices in your life to assist all of us to take advantage of the time that we have created for our own selves, to know ourselves further and unleash the possibilities within. We'll see you next time.